Step into the world of corsets and candelabras as we explore the most haunted, hilarious, and quite frankly, downright drafty homes in Racine. That's right. Today, folks, we are talking about
Ever wondered what it's like to live in a house with more layers of wallpaper than your great aunt's fruitcake?
Russ, fruitcake doesn't have layers.
I don't know. I never liked fruitcake, so I've never eaten it.
But I bet they'll like things about today's Victorian homes.
Yeah, and it may give you an urge to wear a top hat and talk like me with a British accent.
Yeah, not from me, but maybe you. We'll be right back after this, and let's talk about Victorian homes in the city of Racine.
Yeah. Here we go.
All right, welcome back. So first of all, if you find any value in this content today, do us a favor. Click like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell.
Yeah, so you don't miss any future content.
And drop us a comment below. After we've talked about Victorian homes today, we'd love to know your opinion. Do you love a Victorian home? Do you not like a Victorian home? By the end of this video, you will know whether we like Victorian homes or not, or whether I do versus he does. We'll get into that here in a second. Yeah. But let's talk about what a Victorian home even looks like. So first of all, I mean, it's a pretty broad time in history.
Yeah, actually, it ranges from the reign of Queen Victoria, who was one of the longest monarchs.
Well, that's the thing.
And so,
Victorian homes basically started in like 1837 and went all the way to the end of the century.
Yeah, to 1901.
Like just before Edwardians, basically.
Yeah.
And that's a long time. That's like 60 years. Sorry, not 40. It's like over 60 years that Victorian homes was the style.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, you had these, they showed up. You couldn't miss them.
No, you couldn't.
Because they do, that's one thing they do is they stand out.
So one of the characteristics, though, that I will say is that you've got all these different things. And of course, we're talking about architecture today, but we're also going to talk about, I don't know why it is. Why do you think it is that every ghost story just about that you hear, they are in a version of a Victorian home? Like, do ghosts like
Victorian or a Queen Anne style?
Yeah, do Victorians
very similar?
Do ghosts like Victorian style homes better than everybody else?
Of course.
Oh, okay. Is that why? All right. So apparently,
secret passageways.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah.
Well, I do think that one of the reasons that legends of ghosts live on in Victorian homes is because at that time period in history, we did not have major hospitals. And most people, when they were just living to a ripe old age, they would die, they would pass away in the home. And so I think some of those legends of ghosts, etc., comes from that. Because it was very common. I mean, it was the norm. It was what everybody. So when people ask us about a home here in Racine, because we are asked occasionally when we're doing our real estate stuff, they'll say, well, do you think somebody died in this home? And if we're looking at a home from the 1800s, both of us will look at them and we'll say, yep,
probably. Yes.
Probably. And that's mostly because the tradition, and this would go even up to the 1900s, where hospitals existed, but hospitals were only there for emergencies. They weren't there for regular, if you were dying. They were to go into to get treatment and then be released out of. So most people didn't die in hospitals unless they were there for an operation.
People died in their beds.
Yes, and they didn't die in hospitals unless they were there for an operation that went wrong. So if the house that you're wanting and looking at was built in the 1900s, even into the 1900s, before World War II, really, hospitals were primarily about that. So very much so. And Victorian houses, of course, have a lot of other elements besides ghosts.
Yes.
So what are some of the other elements?
Well, the things I love are the steep pitched roofs and the turrets.
You like the turrets?
It looks like a castle,
Well, that's one of the things that's very definite. I mean, it's got the steeply pitched roof with the cross gables, towers, turrets, bay windows. But they even got down to being they were so ostentatious. And I think that is the perfect word to describe a Victorian home, is to talk about it and call it ostentatious, because they are. They are full of all sorts of curly cues and whatnots and all sorts of decorative elements.
Oh yeah, lots of decorative elements,
including the shingles.
Wrap around porches.
But I mean down to even the shingles having patterns on them.
Yeah.
Or the pattern, or the shingles themselves
would
being
be shaped.
Shaped, yes, like there are some. If
Scalloped.
Scallops are probably the most common that you'll see with Victorian homes. These scalloped shingles that they didn't want to just have. I mean, Victorians were ostentatious to the max.
They really wanted people to look up at the roof line of the house. That's what gave it flash.
Right.
You know, it was all there.
Which is why you also see in Victorian homes almost like, so I don't know how to describe it, but like a railing, but flipped upside down all along the edge of the house.
Yeah.
So it would be like, we got like little spindles up at the top. And honestly, that's terrible. I don't know the name of it. But spindles, brackets. Of course, they also had a lot of stained glass. They loved their stained glass.
Yeah.
For sure. So they love stained glass. Most of them were painted really interesting colors, too. Like powder pink.
Yeah.
And baby blue. And even if it was a green, it was a light sage green.
I saw one article which said they were always painted in lady colours.
Well, because it was a Victorian, and Victoria was a lady.
Yes.
And I do think that was part of it, because Victoria herself was a little ostentatious in her dress style. She loved a good dress. She loved having a lot of lace. She loved having a lot of flash. And so the Victorian homes very much played off on that. I mean, she loved a good hat with, feathers and, and all of the corsets and all of that. Well, maybe she didn't love it. We don't know if she actually loved it, but we do know she wore a lot of it, and she was quite fashionable.
And her house on the Isle of Wight, which I have been to,
nice,
was very much so built in the style of Victorian homes,
because
in her
it's
period. And that was painted.
So during pink. Victorian times, it was just called a home.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have been called a Victorian home.
It
would just be a home.
One of her palaces, but that was on the Isle of Wight.
Yeah, and very much she loved that that was her style. It really was her style to be ostentatious and over the top.
And that's why a lot of the decorative detail around the outside that you was talking about, the spindles and that, it demonstrates like lace.
Yes, exactly.
Because she was one for these lace collars and stuff like that.
And sometimes they have these little, I don't know how to call it, like almost like a half round, and it goes up into the peak. And it is almost like a lacy pattern that is just completely decorative. And one of the reasons I think that we don't see that kind of building happening is
cost.
Yeah, it costs a lot of money to put a lot of decorative elements on.
Oh yeah, the skill involved. I know now we have like
machines that can cut it, and it's still, but you still have to pay somebody to install it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the problems with buying a truly true Victorian is if you don't keep those elements up, it loses its and I guess
appeal.
And let's get right to it. I'm not a fan of Victorian homes.
I am.
And you are.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I'm not a fan of Victorian homes is because I see them as like a high maintenance woman.
Yeah.
Or man. A high maintenance home, because you have all these decorative elements that you have to maintain. Now, if you love it and you want us to have a Victorian home, Russ, what I would say to you is, great, then you're going to do the maintenance on it.
Yeah.
Do you still want a Victorian home?
No, I can't go up and down ladders anymore.
No, you couldn't ever go up and down ladders. No. You have a fear of heights. So.
Yes, I do.
Although you've gotten over some of that, which I'm very proud of you for doing that. But we won't go into that today.
I still have the fear, but I go up a ladder now.
Right, he still goes up ladders when he needs to.
Yeah.
Just not quite that high, and certainly not to put on decorative elements or to maintain them. No. So I would say that if you do decide, if you love Victorian homes, that's great. And I do say that the people who buy Victorian homes, they need to have a bank account set aside just to maintain those elements, but not in a mean way. I'm saying when you buy that kind of home, be prepared for that, because it's a shame for somebody to buy a Victorian style home and not maintain it, to let it fall into disrepair. Some of the ones in Racine I've been very upset about were bought and they were turned into rentals, because Victorians are very large homes and have lots of rooms, because they oftentimes had servants. So they would have oftentimes a third floor or a walk-up
into
attic
the
that is
attic,
a third floor walk-up attic, and that's where the servants would stay and live, with a downstairs.
So you often had 2 staircases.
Yep, one on the back side for the servants, one on the front side for the family. And so absolutely, but the thing is, you would have a lot of rooms in these homes. And oftentimes you would also have like a master bedroom would also have a nursery next to it. In fact, sometimes the master bedroom would have, like, that's why we have what in Racine we call walk-through bedrooms now, because sometimes you have this anteroom that was meant for your getting dressed, or for your toiletry in the morning. Because remember, this is prior to bathrooms in houses. Yeah. So women and men would have a basin of water in their thing, and a jug of water and things like that they would wash their face with and take care of their morning toilet, as they used to call it, which is why the way we get our word for toilet from, because the toilette, which is the French word about taking care of yourself. And so they would have many, many rooms, because you needed a room to be getting bathed, like, washing your face and things like that kind of a bathing room. And then you would also have your bedroom, and then you might have a nursery off of that. So you might have a conglomeration of 3 rooms, all connected with doorways in a Victorian.
Yeah.
And not uncommon to see that. And even inside, they're quite decorative.
Oh, very decorative.
Yes.
Lots of woodwork.
Absolutely. The lots of crown molding, first of all, paneling, lots of, and the wallpaper. Oh my goodness, when you said before about more layers of wallpaper, very typical in a Victorian home to see layers upon layers upon layers of wallpaper, because somebody has put one up and then they
wouldn't strip it off.
No, you don't strip off wallpaper, because it was glued to the wall. And in fact, in England, you guys still build your houses and you put wallpaper on as the base coat, almost to hold and smooth everything together.
Yeah,
it's like
we put a plain paper.
Yep. But a lot of people opt
and then paint over it.
But a lot of people opt for textured wallpaper, because they want that texture to it. So they'll get a pattern, like a raised pattern wallpaper, and they'll put a different pattern in every room or in different rooms, because they want a different texture.
Yeah.
But that actually comes from the Victorian times as well. That idea of the raised wallpaper, or the
my mum's house has wallpaper in every room.
Every single room is wallpapered with a texture.
Apart from the kitchen.
Yeah, has a texture to it. So
and the bathroom, that's tiled.
Yes, the bathroom's tiled, but that's different.
But all the bedrooms, living room, dining room.
All of those areas, And most of the houses I've been in England have a wallpaper. Now, the wallpaper is generally a plain white or cream color that it starts with, and then they just put paint over top of it.
Yeah.
So it's not like what we think of here in the States as wallpaper, but wallpaper was very, very big in Victorian homes, and it was very flowery. And speaking of, and it wasn't just, we actually use a lot of wallpaper nowadays that is very Victorian in modern, except for now in our homes, we use them as accent walls.
Yeah.
Like in Victorian times, though, all 4 walls might be that pattern. And you might be like feeling like you're in a circus tent or something, because you just be like, it's so much, it's so busy. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of Victorian, because I like calm, plain, simple. Whereas Victorians, it was all about putting on the show. It was all about impressing the neighbors. And
quite a few of their rooms would be wood paneling.
Yes.
And those that didn't have the wood
paneling. Well, that would be the studies in the libraries.
Yeah, and the hallways.
Yes, and the hallways.
Always the hallways with the big staircases.
Yep.
But then in the living room, dining room areas, the parlour would all be wallpapered. Yeah,
and of course you'd have a parlor and a living, and like a family living room and a dining room, again with the extra rooms and all the extra that, and honestly, ostentatious and extra is really how you can describe Victorian homes the best. Now let's talk a little bit about the ones that are in Racine. So there's, first of all, if you want to see a perfect example of a Victorian home, then you need to go to College Avenue on the south side, of course, which is where College is, between the 15 and 1600 blocks.
Yeah.
So Go between the 15
There's
and
actually
16
several examples along Main Street, along College Avenue,
and Main Street and Wisconsin.
and there's one that stands out a mile.
But there is one that is pink on College
Yeah.
that is amazing. And I have to give props to the people who own it because they do keep it up impeccably.
They
and
do,
it's amazing how well they've kept it up. And but it's really obvious. We're not even going to tell you the address. We could because we know it, but we don't have to tell you the address. Just drive down College on the 1500 block and you are going to see this beautiful pink home.
And it has everything we talked about, the turrets.
It has the turrets. It has this peaky. And the thing is, it actually has like a domed turret, and it has a very peaky
and
roof,
a cone turret.
and a cone turret. It's like it's got all different. It has all the elements.
A wraparound.
The other word that we use to describe Victorian homes in general is Gothic.
Yeah.
And it's very Gothic looking. Like there's no doubt that it has those Gothic elements.
Has the big wraparound porch.
Yep. Even has weather vane looking things. I mean, it is like a Victorian of Victorians of Victorians. It is a very proud lady.
Yes.
And that's the thing is that Victorian homes are referred to as ladies, as you said. They are females. They are, and that's why they're done in lady colors or women's colors, girl colors, because they are ladies. And this is absolutely the one between 15 and 1600. It's not to be, you cannot miss it. There's no doubt. And it's a really amazing house. So if you want to see a perfect example, that's where you go. But there's also quite a few others. So once you've seen that one, drive around that area for a while and you will see a lot of other Victorian homes in that neighborhood. So
definitely.
For sure. And that is where the vast majority of them are. There aren't very many on the north side. They do seem to be clustered mostly on the south side.
Yeah, they are. And up and down Main Street.
Which I found interesting that there weren't more
that.
by North Beach, because I would have expected, because the North Beach area was settled about the same time as the South Side College, Maine, Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think it was more to do with a lot of the wealth was on the south side originally.
Yeah, but why? Because the north side is...
The Johnsons lived on the south side.
True. Horlicks lived on the south side, even though their factory was on the north side.
Exactly.
They lived on the south side.
But they lived on the south side, and you've got different areas that were affluent areas, and so.
But what I'm trying to say is,
Victorian house is a very, very.
I don't understand why the north side that was built around the same time period was not considered the affluent neighborhood. That's what I don't know. And if you do know, if you know any of the history that says why was the north side considered the north side of the river, like just over the river, I mean like right there where the marinas are and stuff now, right across there, I don't understand why that part of Michigan Boulevard.
I think a lot of the industry being on the south side originally, and the docks and all that, like the harbour and
the harbour's right in the middle there, though.
That's why we had.
Maybe they just wanted to. I mean, maybe they just wanted to develop the south side. I don't know. There's just a lot of it on the south side and almost none on the north side. Of the river. So when we say north side, south side, we're really just saying the river, and it is
north of the river or south of the river.
And most of the Victorians are either on Main Street or Wisconsin or College from downtown outwards. But even then, it still doesn't start till about 10th or 11th Street is when you start seeing the Victorians.
Yeah.
Before that, you've got a lot of brick-built buildings and
you've got some Queen Anne style as well, and they were around the same period and. Duplicate a lot of the features.
So what's the difference between a Queen Anne and a Victorian?
Not much.
Okay.
They sometimes don't necessarily have the turrets.
Gotcha. Okay. So the turrets were the turrets and the domes were more Victorian.
More Victorian. Some Queen Anne does, but there was a later period.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Maybe they were getting away from that ostentatious feeling. And didn't have as many. All right, that makes sense. But they are definitely eye candy. I mean, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And so if you
when they're kept up, they're beautiful. I love them.
And I do think, we'll mention, because the first electrified home in the nation, it's not in Racine.
Not just in the nation.
First
in the world.
In the world. Not in Racine. So let's make that really clear. Even though this channel is living in Racine. It wasn't. However, it was a Victorian, and it was in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
It was in Appleton.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
It's
the first
weird,
home with
yeah.
electricity.
I mean, I found that out today, and I was amazed. It's this guy had a paper mill, one of the first paper mills,
and one of the first. Well, the first industry to be electrified as well. He was on the cutting edge of technology.
He was.
He must have been one of the believers, like those who really believed in Elon Musk at the beginning of Tesla.
Yeah.
He would have been like the believer in Edison. Because obviously he hired Edison Technology. He must have believed in his inventions before they were invented, because to be the first one is pretty amazing. And if you've ever seen...
So the guy who built the house was Henry James Rogers, and he built a house for his wife, Cremora.
Which is an awful name.
Awful
name. Who names their daughter Cremora? C-R-E...
Yeah, it sounds like crematorium.
Oh, C-R-E-M-O-R-A. I mean, that's just I feel so bad for her, and hopefully none of their children beyond.
But he had all the latest technologies. Yeah. Not only for his factory, which was next door,
so
but
he is
also
the equivalent. So he is the
home.
Equivalent of a smart home in Victorian times.
Really is, yeah.
Funny,
and
but also
they've actually kept it. It's now a museum.
So it's now a museum in Appleton. So if you want to go see it, you can go see it as a museum.
It's called Halfstone Mansion, after the restaurant that was there after the original people. It became a restaurant.
Gotcha.
And now it's a museum. But they've kept all the original. Even the light switches are Edison
Technologies. Nice.
Yeah.
Of course, of those of you probably know, the most famous Victorian house that you probably are aware of is from Mrs. Doubtfire. The house that they had in Mrs. Doubtfire. And there's a lot of them in San Francisco as well. Yeah. There's quite a few in San Francisco.
They're all over America, but yeah, if you've ever wondered what they look like, then
if you don't have time, you don't live in Racine.
If you've seen the film,
maybe if you don't live in Racine and you can't drive down the 1500 block of College Avenue, which, by the way, if you live in Racine or you're visiting Racine, you must drive down the 1500 block of College. That is, it's first of all, it's a brick road. It's one of the only brick roads left in the city of Racine. Is College Avenue at that point. Yes. And I would actually start at 14th personally. I'd come up the one side of S.C. Johnson, get to College Avenue, turn onto College Avenue there, and drive down it. You can see the brickwork, you can see the beautiful Victorian homes, and that one in particular, which is on the between 15 and 1600. Yeah. Absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous home. So that's pretty much it for Victorian homes. Yeah. So tell us, what do you think? Do you like the ostentatious style of a Victorian home, or do you actually prefer something more simplistic? Are you more like Russ, who loves all that flair and all that decoration?
I love the architecture, but I wouldn't want a clean one.
Or have the maintenance. Yes, exactly. But I am not a big fan of them anyway, in any way, shape, or form. So who do you most agree with? Do you like them like Russ? Or, don't worry about the maintenance part, because, you're not having to maintain it just because you like it. Do you like it like Russ does, or do you not like it like I do? Because I think it's kind of extra, as the kids say. And
a bit over the top.
A bit over the top for me, yeah. Because I'm not a high maintenance woman, so I don't really like high maintenance stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, what do you guys think? Drop us a comment below. What do you think about the Victorian homes? Do you think Victorian homes are ostentatious and extra, or do you love that ostentatious and extra style of a Victorian home? And once again, do us a favor. If you've gotten any value from this content, click like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any of our content. And otherwise, we'll see you next week. Bye for now.